I did lots of classes, lots of books, all sorts of things, so I could begin to understand how this works. And at the end of 3 years, I was eligible to become what they called in the church a licensed practitioner, which gave me the opportunity to work one-on-one with other people. And that's, I think, when the changes really started to happen, because I was began to teach other people how to do this and how to change their thinking so they could change their life. People were getting good results working with me. And then I started teaching classes. And those turned out very well. And the next thing I knew, I was doing weekend workshops for 350 people. So one of the things I began to really notice was what people said, how they said it, and what was wrong in their body. And I started to put things together. And I really trained my mind to listen to what people said. I put a list together for my own use with clients, and I'd alphabetized it, so if you came in with a problem, I could look it up quickly and see what I had written about it. And I showed it to a friend in class, and she said to me, "Oh, Louise, what a great idea. Why don't you make a little book out of it?" And I went, "Oh, really? A book?" So my first little book was done in 1976. That was Heal Your Body. And that was the mental patterns for the physical ailments in the bodies and how to make changes. I really believe that the big boys, as I call them, would not publish the book. And if they did, they probably would want to change it. Because my ideas at that time were very radical. Your thinking can change your life. And I wanted to say it the way I wanted to say it. I didn't want a word changed because I knew what I was doing. So I printed the book myself. So I went to the church printer because I didn't know where else to go, and I had this little 12-page pamphlet put together. And I remember taking it to my teacher and showing it to him, and he said, "Oh, Louise, isn't that sweet? What a nice thing you've done. How many did you have printed, 200? And I said, "No, 5,000. He went, "You're crazy. You'll never sell that thing." But 2 years later, I'd sold all 5,000. I sent a free copy to every metaphysical church that I knew of, and an order form. And many of them took it. And that was my first little book.
I read her little book and I said, this would never work for me. But I came home determined to try it. At the time, I was being treated for fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. I was self-employed. My energy levels were so low, I was barely putting in 20 hours a week, completely ignoring my children and my responsibilities. And I started her affirmation. My body now restores itself to its natural state of good health. And I saw the difference in a week. I said it all the time, and I started doing her mirror work. I would go to the mirror, and though I didn't feel it and the words stuck in my throat, I would look in the mirror and I would say, "I love you very much, Jackie. You're perfect exactly the way you are."
All right, this is going well. I have all the power. And nothing can stop me. I feel healthy and breathing, and air feels really good, and I'm accepting that I'm a part of the universe, and it gives me exactly what I asked for. Okay, so I totally tripped. It's all right. It was a positive trip.
In the moments of deepest despair, there's actually humor always. Humor lifts us up to God. It lightens up every situation. But just before you get there, there's usually this time of pain-filled joy or joy-filled pain, where you might have to break down with some deep sobs.
When someone's in trouble, I think of them just like someone who's come out of a movie, a scary movie, and they're crying. Their tears are real, their fear is real, but what they saw that caused the fear is not real, it's a movie. So what I'll do is I offer some suggestions about ways to reframe their situation or find a blessing in a seeming problem. And yes, there are challenges in life that we all go through, and there's no shame with that, but it's what you do with the challenges that counts.
Now that I know when so-called negative things happen, that they're really positive things, and that what I need to do is focus on a positive outcome, and then stay course, and then so shall I have that experience.
The way that you retrain yourself is to shift from having a fear to having a curiosity. You know, substitute the word curiosity for the word fear.
Because a lot of us, when we start doing those things to honor our soul or to express our creativity, those are really vulnerable acts. You know, the things that we intend or that we affirm for our lives are those things that are deeply important to our soul, and so they're vulnerable. And too often we turn to people who just squash them, you know, or who tell you why it isn't going to work, or why that's a crazy affirmation, or that's a crazy intention. That's called going to the hardware store for milk. You want to go to the people who are really going to hold your hand on the journey and say, hey, I'm there, right there with you.
Awareness is the first step in healing or changing. When you're facing challenges on the journey, it's tempting to turn back or to blame somebody for the situation. The healing attitude, though, is to think of any external challenge as simply a reflection of your own internal resistance to change.
I'm sure everyone I know thinks I'm totally nuts. And they're right. I'll never make it through this. I'll probably flake out like I always do. Besides, this isn't even doing any good anyway.
Before the 15th and 16th centuries, all of the ships were made out of wood. Not because iron wasn't available and steel wasn't available, but because there was a belief that wood floated. So therefore you had to make ships out of things that floated. And then someone came along and said that it has absolutely nothing to do with what things are made out of. It has to do with the amount of water that is being dispersed. That's what determines whether something will float or not. And I think about that all the time, because it's in the contemplation of what you desire that you create what it is that you want to have for yourself. The law of flotation was not discovered by the contemplation of the sinking of things.
I mean, come on. I'm not one of these self-help people. I don't believe in crystals and white light and the divine feminine and angels and source energy. I mean, what is that? Let's be real. This is all just wishful thinking.
We tend to live our lives based on what we believe about ourselves.